Could this be what Donald Trump has been promising us for so long, the final stretch of this very long 4-year war, ending in some kind of ceasefire and possibly even a peace? But then, judging from what Vladimir Putin said in his marathon 4-hour pre-Christmas press conference yesterday, he's not about to give up anything at all. Let's speak to James Nixey, Russian affairs analyst, who's recently stepped down as director of the Russia-Eurasia program at Chatham House. James, good morning to you.
Good morning, Matt.
So let's just talk about the latest developments in these peace talks then. Trump forever hopeful that, this thing will be done by Christmas, although, of course, he also said it would be done in 24 hours with him getting the White House back. Are we any closer to a resolution, do you think?
No, we're no closer whatsoever. The reality is, I'm sorry to say this, but there is no peace process. And the reason for that is because ultimately, to put it really bluntly, really grossly, the Russians want to take Ukraine and the Ukrainians want to live. And the logic of war is that must continue until one side or the other is exhausted. I'm not saying that has to be the Russian or the Ukrainian side, but for now, they simply can't get. The two sides are just too distant from each other. Their demands, their respective demands are too different for there to be any ability to negotiate with what's there. There is simply no room for compromise. Putin doesn't want to compromise on his so-called maximalist demands, but and those include, frankly, a withdrawal of NATO to its pre-1991 positions. So it goes way beyond issues of Ukraine. And for the Ukrainians, they seem unwilling to give up territory. They have indicated they would rescind their desire to join NATO. So they're willing to give in certain areas, but they're not willing to give in each and every area. Not if you think back to that 28-point plan developed by the Russians but sold by the Americans just 3 weeks ago, then even that was not actually acceptable to the Russians, it would appear, and that certainly wasn't acceptable to the Ukrainians or the Europeans, of course.
So are you saying that even if the Ukrainians were to say goodbye to the 25% or so of territory that has been occupied by the Russians in the eastern region known as Donbass, even if they were to say goodbye to all that, Russia would still not be prepared to settle because they want to subjugate the whole country?
That is exactly what I'm saying, and more than that, because Russia asked for us to address the so-called root causes. And what he means by that, what the code for that, is that the West is constantly interfering in what Russia says is its rightful backyard, its rightful sphere of influence. And until that very sort of maximalist, that very large demand is acceded to by the West. But the Russians believe this is a proxy war with the West, that Ukraine is simply the theatre. They might be right on that, by the way. And so, again, there is simply, no matter how much the Americans try to force it, no matter how much they give it, if they give in to the Ukrainians on the one side, or if they give in to the Russians on the other side, it simply won't be acceptable to the other protagonist in the debate.
Right, yeah. So we know that the Europeans have, made this loan available, albeit not with frozen Russian assets, of 90 billion euros, which apparently will keep Ukraine going beyond April, beyond spring. We also know, apparently, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the Russian economy is coming under some strain with the amount of money that it's had to pay out to its soldiers to carry on fighting, because they're not all doing it out of the goodness of their heart.
Right.
So is money the deciding factor in this conflict? Who runs out first is prepared to sue for peace?
That is reasonable. It's just that neither are at the end of their tether yet. So, neither side is particularly healthy at the moment. The Ukrainians are certainly worn out, tired. There are internal problems with troop morale. They've been hacking away at this for the last 3.5 years now, and so I'm certainly, much as we might want Ukraine to succeed, I'm afraid that it is still outnumbered and outgunned in this war. You're absolutely right about Russia. Russia is resilient, but it's not impregnable, and it's certainly showing some signs of wear and tear, to say the very least. But I'm afraid Russia's got quite a bit more in it still to come.
So, I made a very optimistic prediction to myself, and luckily not to anyone else, but I'll share it with the listeners, that this thing might be over by spring. Is that ridiculously optimistic?
I'm afraid it is. I'm sorry to say. Look, it's an atrocity and a tragedy combined, and it would be great if it were to be over in the right way. Of course, it depends how it is over. Of course, there is a way of finishing this war, and that is capitulating to the Kremlin's demands overnight. But the Ukrainians know from the war crimes that we have seen committed in Bucha and other places that will mean their effective extermination. Putin simply doesn't believe that Ukraine is a real country, and he wishes to subsume it in one way or another. That doesn't necessarily mean literal control, as it perhaps did in Soviet times, but it certainly means a different government to the Zelensky government, and it certainly means more than a veto over its domestic and foreign policies.
As you were just saying with James, I mean, it's been almost 4 years since this war started. It seemed inconceivable in that dark night of February the 24th, 2022, it would go on for this long, but it has. How exhausted is your country? How exhausted are you by this constant fighting?
We are indeed exhausted, but what our options are? Let's look realistically at the options that are in hand right now. We can continue fighting, which is the plan A, and we can capitulate, which is a plan B, and I do not see a reason why we would go with the plan B. Because we know what would happen to us if Russia takes over Donbass. They still have 4 of our regions included into their constitution. Matt, we all know that they wouldn't stop in Donbass. And that means that our capitulation will actually mean nothing because they will continue fighting. As of right now, there is not a single power in the world that could say, we will stop Putin, and so you can trust their word. So we are not trusting, and though it is very hard. Well, yesterday I only had electricity for, I think, 4 hours a day, same as many people in Ukraine. Last week, millions of people didn't have electricity for 5 days straight. But again, what is our alternative? An alternative is much worse, because to be killed, raped, and to see how everything you worked for and fought for will be destroyed is very bad alternative, and we are not taking it.
So last night also, I think 7 people were killed in the glorious southern city of Odessa. And I wonder whether the war now is felt more in the great cities of Ukraine than it was at the beginning of it. I mean, not right at the beginning when Russian troops were in Kyiv and then repelled, of course, but in the first year of the war. Is it worse now than it was then?
It's different because by this time, Putin has destroyed the majority of our energy infrastructure. So no matter where in Ukraine you are right now, you can feel the war. And their nightly attacks, they continue in different cities. And when you go to bed in the evening, you don't know if you're a target this night. So right now, Russia seems to have a different strategy. They are trying to isolate specific regions in Odessa from Ukraine all in all. And we are trying to figure out a way to stop this and to provide a means of coordination. So they destroyed the bridges, and right now they're trying to destroy the roads. But again, their main goal didn't change. They want to destroy Ukraine as whole. And I think one of the, again, if you don't, for some reason, if somebody does not believe us by this point, you should just listen to what Putin said yesterday. Right. That they will go ahead and they will not stop unless they are stopped. And right now we only see that whoever can stop them, it's us.
Right. And he seems to be quite confident, and he was telling that press conference yesterday that Ukraine is on the retreat and Russia is further on the advance. 2 more questions to you, Kira. How disappointed are you that even though you got your 90 billion euro loan to carry on fighting from the EU, this was not money provided by Russia's frozen assets?
Oh, I'm honestly disappointed because it was both money and a sign to Russia that Europe is united and that Europe understands like the symbolic gesture that would happen if they would confiscate their assets. There is only one good side of this, is that money are still there and it's still frozen. and that at some point, perhaps European leaders will find strength and courage in themselves to have this decision, and then we will have additional 200 billion. You know how we have worked on this since the beginning of full-scale invasion. It is extremely upsetting that by the words everybody is supporting us, but when it comes to making the decision to punish an aggressor, to do the thing that is just, fair, logical, and I think people of European Union will appreciate it, then for some reason it's not done.
Okay. Can you understand that some people are reluctant, taxpayers and governments, to give money to Ukraine when you've had a whopping corruption scandal at the heart of power, which has led to the resignation or the sacking of Andriy Yermak, Zelensky's chief of staff, his most important advisor?
Yeah, I totally understand that. And I'm as shocked and as upset as you are, even more, because this is our country, and we were asking our partners, and this was happening behind the closed doors. We just hope that anti-corruption organs will finish what they have started, and I think all pro-European, pro-Ukrainian forces right now are taking it as a personal matter to make sure that this will get to court and that people will be punished, because this is beyond darkness, this is beyond absurd, and this is beyond painful when somebody decides to do this in the midst of the war, when we are fighting for our survival and people decide to steal. And the damage to the trust of our partners has already been done. And again, I have nothing to do with it, but I still feel like I have to apologize.
Okay, Kira, and I hear your pain, and at least the difference between your country and Russia is that in your country these things are being exposed. People are getting sacked. In Russia that would probably not be the case. Final question to you, James. What do you think motivates the Americans in all this? Is it money? Is it a deal? Or is it something, to do with values and sovereignty and self-determination? And ultimately, what motivates Vladimir Putin? Is it, the parchment documents that he uncovered in the Kremlin during COVID about the resurrection of the Russian Empire?
Yeah. So, as far as the Americans are concerned, obviously this is a very outlier administration, and it does seem as though Donald Trump looks upon Vladimir Putin as a kind of a kindred spirit, a fellow leader of a great power, and that great nations, great powers, so-called, should do business together, and the little nations, such as Ukraine, of course it's not little, you don't matter and shouldn't be making these decisions. So I think there's an undercurrent of feeling. I know that Trump does flip-flop a little bit here and there, but the undertone is very much that he wants to get this done for Russians. As far as Vladimir Putin is concerned, then I think it's pretty simple that he himself is a great power nationalist, an ultra-conservative fanatic who believes that Russia should extend to wherever there are, as he sees it, ethnic Russians, and he believes that Ukrainians are Russians. Of course, they're not, and is willing, and he needs an empire to be that kind of place. So Putin, yes, of course, he's motivated by money. We know that he is corrupt. We know he has amassed a tremendous amount, more than any American tech bro, so according to some. But I think more than that, I do think that he is, at heart, an ultra-nationalist patriot who will stop at nothing and realize that he could not get what he wanted by diplomatic means, so he had to use military means.